Good morning and welcome to the Liverpool Daily News. I'm James Martin and I'm joined today by Ben Bocsak. We're both from Liverpool.com, and today we'll be taking you through all of the goings on in the world of Liverpool, whether that's transfers, whether that's other things. In fact, today it's a lot of kind of non-transfer stuff for a bit of a change. There's some other developments going on, sort of adjacent to Liverpool more than directly affecting the club, but certainly things that will interest any Liverpool fan. As you'll have seen before we got started there on the thumbnail, Loris Karius and Adam Lallana are among the topics of discussion today. Some interesting developments with both of those. We'll start with Adam Lallana, Ben. Of course, the weekend's fixtures are now up in the air, so whether or not this goes ahead remains to be seen. But reports have it that if Brighton are to play before they appoint a permanent manager, it looks as though Adam Lallana will be in temporary charge of that one. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to note that he will be co-managing the team with the club's academy manager, I believe. So he won't be primarily in charge of the club. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, he's probably one of Brighton's most senior players, so it's not surprising that he would be given this interim role. But I'm sure Brighton will find a manager as soon as possible, and it won't be for a long period.
Well, there were even some reports that he was on the kind of shortlist for a long-term manager. Whether that comes to pass or not, I guess maybe depends on how he gets on if there is a sort of temporary period. But it would certainly be a bold appointment given his complete lack of managerial experience so far. But the very fact that he's being entrusted at the very least with a co-manager role and then maybe in the frame for something beyond that, I guess they've been impressed by what they've seen on the training pitch from him. I suppose at Liverpool, he was the kind of player, wasn't he, who did seem to always understand Klopp's tactical instructions, even if he wasn't necessarily able to carry them all out due to the sort of constraints of his body, certainly in the latter years.
Maybe, but I also think there it was a bit of a desperation because Graham Potter did take most of his stuff with him to Chelsea, so I do think that had a role in it. I mean, maybe his ambition is to become a manager, but I think it would be definitely too soon to get the Brighton job, especially when they have a lot of quality managers available, whether those who are on free contracts and available to go to Brighton or the likes of Andrew Postecoglou, who has been linked and, he's done very well at Celtic. Obviously, Brighton will have to pay money and will have to do a lot of convincing for him to come to the Premier League. But they did get a hefty transfer fee, as you would like, for Graham Potter and his coaching staff. So they do have the money now to spend on a talented coach. So I doubt Adam Lallana will be sitting in that Brighton dugout as a manager, at least for a long while.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think Andrew Postecoglou is a good name to raise if they could manage to prize him away from Celtic in a Champions League campaign. Then they'd be doing very well. But yeah, it would certainly be a very exciting appointment. And given how they operate in the transfer market, you'd back them to be similarly sort of shrewd and data driven in their managerial search, which Adam Lallana doesn't really tick that box. But from a selfish Liverpool perspective, it would be fun to see it anyway, and I hope he at least gets a couple of games in the interim period. We'll move on to Loris Karius. We've got Kumar in the chat saying Karius was decent for us before the Kiev game. Wish him all the best. And the place where we're wishing him all the best looks like it's going to be Newcastle United, where he looks set to join on a free transfer. He's been without a club since Liverpool finally let him go. So yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have thought he'll be the first choice there, given that they've signed Nick Pope. But do you think that there's a chance for him to somewhat resurrect his career at Newcastle?
I mean, it's an opportunity. I'm sure he will be delighted to have gotten a Premier League job, considering he hasn't really played a lot in the last couple of years. Obviously, Newcastle is a big club. It's just a short-term contract, but all it takes is one injury to Nick Pope, and he could be in the starting 11. And that's a good opportunity for him, I think, to sort of redeem his career, because I do think there is a talented goalkeeper out there. I mean, I'm sure he struggled a lot mentally since the events of Kiev, but if he can resurrect his career, it's now or never, given the fact that he is sort of getting on in age, even as a goalkeeper.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth talking about that sort of pre-Kiev run. I mean, he did look better in that period. Did you see in that time a goalkeeper who is sort of Premier League standard, or did you always think Liverpool would need to upgrade?
I mean, he had moments, but I always thought he was a bit inconsistent to be, um, at least for Liverpool, a Premier League starter. I mean, Newcastle aspire to be where Liverpool want to be, so I can't see him staying there long term. Obviously, he's got a few decent goalkeepers ahead of him in the pecking order as well. But I do think he has the quality to be at least a Bundesliga goalkeeper, at least a mid-table Premier League goalkeeper. He has that ability about him in terms of his shot stopping. Some of his decision making and his ability on the ball is a bit of a concern, but in terms of his reflexes and shot stopping ability, that's a big strength of his.
Yeah, it's worth remembering that he was voted, I think, the second best goalkeeper in the Bundesliga in his season with Mainz before, just behind Neuer, before Liverpool signed him. So yeah, he has certainly shown potential at various points in his career, and I'm sure we'd all echo Kumar's thoughts that we would wish him all the best. Yeah, it's another comment we have there, also from Kumar. I think tomorrow's game getting postponed, if it does happen, is a good thing for us. Our coaching staff need some time to sort out a few things. Fidel points out, I fear it will be postponed, but where else in this crazy calendar can it go? Of course, Liverpool.com will bring you all of the latest when we know for sure what's going on with any potential postponements. But yeah, what are you thinking about that in terms of would some extra time on the training pitch be useful, or would it just add to the problems further down the line with all of the fixture congestion?
I mean, Liverpool's problem is that they're tired and they're exhausted. So temporarily, it might be a good, way to get some rest. I mean, if this week is cancelled, then I believe probably next week is also cancelled because of the Queen's funeral that will be happening. So that could potentially be 2 games cancelled, which is a bit of a worry considering you look at the calendar and there's not really that many places where Liverpool could play unless it coincides with the World Cup, which it's not going to happen. So it is something to keep an eye on. Liverpool are obviously exhausted after a season where they played, I think, 63 games. And some of those Liverpool players were involved in almost all of those games, the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold and a few others in there as well. So I don't think it's necessarily a good thing. I mean, even if it's a week off or 2 weeks off, is that enough time for Jurgen Klopp to sort of instill a new philosophy, a new style? I don't think so. I mean, he had 5 or 6 weeks in pre-season, and that wasn't enough to get the best out of his Liverpool team. So I think he needs an extended period to sort of integrate a new style into the team, and I don't think that's going to happen in a week or 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. But of course, we all understand the calls for postponement, and if that is indeed the course of action that transpires, then there are certainly reasons for that everyone will, I'm sure, be sympathetic with, whether or not we agree or disagree. An interesting point from Fidel here, going back to Loris Karius. He says he should have been given a chance when we were behind closed doors to rebuild some confidence. That's an interesting shout, isn't it? I suppose particularly if you look at the first coronavirus-affected season where Liverpool essentially had the league wrapped up. Could that have been a chance where Karius could maybe have been given a run?
Well, was he even included in the Liverpool Premier League squad?
That's a good point. He might have been out on loan, mightn't he? Was he at Besiktas at the time, or who knows?
Either out on loan or potentially not. He didn't make the squad because by that point Liverpool had Adrian, I think. No, not yet. But there was a few other goalkeepers in contention, so I'm not really sure if he was in the Premier League squad. I mean, maybe Fidel knows, and that's why he was commenting that. But we're getting a few other comments. I think David Thompson saying he was out, so that wasn't really a possibility. Maybe it would have given his confidence a boost, but I'm not quite sure. I think it would have been better to be given a chance with a full Anfield in support of him, and I think that would have helped him mentally a lot more than playing a few games behind closed doors where, then he'd be back onto the pitch with fans. I mean, it transpired that it ended up being a year later, I think, when Liverpool had a full Anfield, but eventually, sooner or later, he would have been back to playing with fans, and who knows, like, if he makes one mistake there, then his confidence will shatter again, and so forth. So I don't think it would have benefited him as much necessarily to play behind closed doors.
Yeah, and David says I actually can't remember why Klopp selected him that Kiev night. It's a question that's haunted all of us. But he was the first choice in that second half of the season. He'd ousted Mignolet about halfway through. He had the metaphorical number one shirt. I can't remember if he actually wore number one or not. He might have done because Mignolet never did he? But yeah, either way, it was he was the first choice. In hindsight, it's easy to say, would Mignolet have done a better job? I've always been in Mignolet's camp. I've always said he gets a bit of a hard time. Obviously, Alisson came in and was a massive upgrade on the pair of them. But, I think Mignolet had his moments too. But, yeah, I mean, as we alluded to earlier, he did have a decent run up to that final. And, if things had transpired differently, it's a proper sliding doors moment, isn't it? Things like his career could have been completely different if that final had gone differently for him.
I mean, even if Liverpool just took him off after his alleged concussion, I think that could have changed everything in the final. I'm not quite sure why that didn't happen. I mean, that's a mystery. That, like you said, is a sliding doors moment. You don't know what would have happened then. I think that's why it is really harsh to criticize Karius for that final, because supposedly he did have a head injury. And, I mean, I think it was kind of obvious as well, because we didn't really see Karius making those sort of mistakes throughout the season when he was in form and when he was in top condition. So unfortunately, that's the way it turned out. Thankfully, Liverpool have won a Champions League final since then. So yeah, I mean, we can talk all day about what would have happened, but there's no point dwelling on the past.
Yeah, I was going to mention, of course, that Liverpool, the very next season, as you say, went on and won the Champions League, making amends. And I think that's an important point to remember at the moment as well. With all of the struggles on the pitch, Liverpool do tend to respond well to adversity under Klopp. Even in 2021, of course, we came back next season, had a good run at the quadruple, ended up with 2 trophies. So, yeah, I think much as it's not the easiest time to be watching Liverpool at the moment, I think we'd all back Klopp as the best man to turn it around in the short term and in the long term. So, yeah, maybe Karius in a roundabout way is a reminder of all that. So, best of luck to him at Newcastle. Best of luck to Lallana at Brighton if he ends up taking the reins there for any extended period of time. And that'll just about do it. Thank you very much for watching and for commenting. We love reading your comments as ever. Be sure to check out our content on Liverpool.com today and across Blood Red. We'll be back soon with another Liverpool Daily News.